Good evening, members, and welcome to our first meeting of the new civic year. And can I welcome Councillor Mrs. Wilson, who has joined as a fully fledged member of the committee this year. And can I welcome residents watching on YouTube and also the members of the public in our audience this evening. Item 1, apologies for absence. I have no apologies for absence. Item 2, declarations of interest. Does any member wish to declare the existence and nature of any disclosable pecuniary interest, other pecuniary interest or non-pecuniary interest relating to items on the agenda, having regard to the Code of Conduct for members? Councillor Ritchie.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Can I declare non-pecuniary interest, please, in item 5D on this evening's agenda, 22003058H, Coniston Close, as a member of, Vice Chairman of Great Notley Parish Council. The meetings of that meeting that this planning item was discussed will reflect that I left the meeting for the duration of that discussion. Therefore, I shall remain, debate and vote. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Councillor Mrs. Barker.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Apologies for being late. Yes, I'd like to declare an NPI, please, in item 5C. That's application 21/0/1962, 72 to the Eldon Road. Madam Chairman, I didn't think that this application would come to committee because it is only for 2 dwellings and normally under our scheme of delegation that is dealt with by officers. And so therefore I wrote in to object to this application. I therefore am unable to take part as I have predetermined the application, and I think it would be appropriate for me to leave the room.
I think so too. Yes,
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else wish? No. That brings us on to item 3, the minutes. I have the minutes of the 19th of April. Is it your wish that, does anyone have any comments on these minutes? If they're correct, would someone like to move them?
Move them as a correct record, Chair.
Thank you. Just find a seconder. That's 2 or 3 places. Thank you. All those in favour that I sign these as a true record? Thank you very much indeed. That brings us on to item 4, public question time. We have no general questions this evening. Those people wishing to make a statement, make it prior to each application as they come to each item. So we come on to the planning applications, and the first application, 5A, is application 2002-091 VAR, Land of Millennium Way, Cressing. We have no speakers on this item, so I go straight to the presentation, which is going to be made by Matthew. Good evening, Matthew, and thank you.
Good evening, Madam Chair, and good evening, members. Okay, so the application before you this evening is to vary conditions 35, which relate to the Galleys Corner roundabout improvements, and condition 36, which relate to the Fowler's Farm roundabout improvements. These conditions were linked to the original planning permission for the DIY retail warehouse at the site, which is land off Millennium Way in Cressing. Just to confirm that because it's a variation, it's not a reconsideration of the scheme in its entirety. It's just looking at the matters that are before you this evening in terms of the conditions. So the location plan, so the site is here. There's a separate plan that shows it a bit better, but it's the actual DIY store is over here. And this roundabout is the Fowler's Farm roundabout, and there's a Millennium Way. And then this is the Galleys Corner roundabout, as you all know. And then this is the approved site location plan. Just for reference, really, just as a reminder to what was consented. Okay, so I just included a couple of photos, even though it's only for condition changes, and part of that is because the works that have taken place on the site, which I'll show you. So Millennium Waste is up here on the right. You can see the sort of Kia garage. Hopefully most of you will be familiar with the junction and the road. The site is just here and a bit beyond this tree line. And you can see just here I'm actually standing on an earth bund which was made from excavating or certainly doing some site clearance works on this part of the site, which is where the DIY store would be and some of its car parking. And there's a trench that was dug as well on one part of it. So, as you'll see in the report, section 10.4, where it covers it in full, the summary is that they have materially commenced development on the site. So basically the reason why this application is before you this evening to change these conditions is because at the moment they are 2 pre-commencement conditions, meaning that they, in theory, the developer shouldn't have started prior to discharging those conditions, but they have started, materially started. So it's essentially to change the conditions, as I'll show you in a second, to avoid further prejudicing the requirements for the roundabout improvements, and basically let them get on and build the scheme. Just to point out that there's been a slight change further to the publication of the report to condition 34 in the report, which was 35 originally for Galley's Corner. So it's really a semantics thing, following a concern raised by the applicant, but basically it just it's just a reordering basically. There's no fundamental change to what is said. It's just the trigger remains that the prior to commencement of development is removed, and it's just quite specific now to works the Galley's Corner roundabout shall not take place until details of the scheme have been submitted to and proved in writing, etc. So just to flag that has changed, but it hasn't changed the substance of what the condition is trying to achieve. Okay, so the condition, just before I show you the differences, just to make it absolutely clear, because it's so big, it's on a couple of slides, but I've highlighted the differences. One of the things that has changed is because the development has materially commenced, the time limit condition, which is normally condition 1, attached to the original application, hasn't been carried over. So essentially what's happened is that the conditions have all sort of minused by 1. So condition 35 is now condition 34 as proposed. So so you'll see on the left is the original condition as it was worded, and on the right is the proposed wording reflecting the most recent change that I've just showed you. So it's that works at Galley's Corner roundabout opposed to no development, and the little bit in there about the consultation with National Highways as well. So that's the only thing that's changed on that part. And then you don't have to read through this, but essentially it's just showing that the detail which underpin the condition is to remain, apart from some bits which, in consultation with Highways England, have been taken out as they're no longer necessary. The bits I've highlighted on the left. I think originally the application proposed to remove these, the sort of detail as well as the pre-commencement condition, but officers raised concerns about this, given that a lot of this mitigation works were part of the environmental statement that accompanied the original planning application. So officers were keen that it was kept in the condition. So that has been kept in basically. It hasn't been taken out. So that's there. And then the last part of the condition hasn't really been changed much. The satisfaction of the local planning authority has been taken out. It's no longer necessary because it's kind of covered by the slightly revised wording. And then the key point is that the actual DIY retail warehouse or the store can't be open for trade until the Galley's Corner roundabout improvement scheme has been delivered and is fully operational. So as I said before, it kind of, the way the conditions now word is it allows them to essentially get on with some of the other elements of the scheme while the roundabout works sort of go on in the background. And I did just include the full condition for completeness. We won't obviously go through it, but just to show it just includes those different elements that we just looked at. In terms of the Fowler's Farm roundabout, I've actually managed to get it on one page. But in terms of the changes, this is a little bit more fundamental in that it's changed to a Grampian condition because the roundabout is actually not within the red line for the Fowler's Farm, whereas the Galleys Corner one is within the red line. So basically what's happened is, as well as the removal of the pre-commencement element, it's basically the order's flipped, so it's worded negatively like a Grampian condition is. So it's the DIY store trying to be open for trade. So it's almost like reversed from the other condition for Galleys Corner, if that makes sense, that we just looked at. But it's the same thing essentially, that they need to deliver the scheme separately, and it can't be open for trade until it's implemented and fully operational. And I'm pleased to report that following discussions with the applicants, even though in section 10.7 of the committee report, page 24, it sets out that it was unreasonable for the council to require the developer to provide electric vehicle charging points. Having discussed it with them, they have agreed to a strategy, electric vehicle charging strategy. So that should provide for some electric vehicle charging, and this is the suggested wording for you for the additional condition, which would be number 38. So the recommendation for you this evening will be to approve the other changes to 35 and 36, or 35 and 34 in the Appendix 1, and include this condition as well. So just to wrap everything up then, so the development has materially commenced on the site, as I discussed. The changes to conditions 35 and conditions 36 is to remove the pre-commencement element of the conditions, as I said, but essentially they still retain those details which need to be submitted to us in consultation with National Highways or Essex County Council. So depending on whether it's the Fowler's Farm or Galleys Corner roundabout. And then obviously the new condition which I just showed you for the electric vehicle charging strategy. So that's basically to reduce any conflict with the neighbourhood plan. So the recommendation for you this evening is that the conditions are amended and condition 38 is added, and that as long as the developer agrees to sign deed of variation of section 106, that members approve the application this evening. Happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Matthew. Thank you. Councillor Mann.
Thank you, Chairman. I agree with, I think, all the major points in the officer's report. I agree that it's necessary for the council to retain control of the details of the roundabout improvement schemes. I mean, these are, very significant sort of roundabouts, so we've got to get them right. I think it is acceptable to knock out the prior to commencement restriction on the former conditions 35 and 36, but not to remove the requirement of the further details of the improvement schemes that must be submitted and approved. And I note that both Highways Essex and National Highways are comfortable with what is proposed here, which is again an important point. So happy to move officer's recommendation together with the new condition, which may be 7 or 38.
38.
Don't know what happened to 37 then. But the key thing is they can't actually open for business until all this is done, which is, very, very important.
Thank you, Councillor. Does it find a seconder? It does. Councillor Bowers, you did indicate you wish to speak, so I'll let you speak.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. Yes, the site will be a gateway to the town, and these won't just, I think Councillor Mansell alluded to with these roundabout sort of changes, these aren't just condition changes, they are quite significant changes that will affect the area. I obviously know the area quite well, and the particular situation at the moment is a no-go area at weekends. The congestion is so significant. It was previously only sort of situations at weekends, but now it's a constant. It was just during peak times, but it's now just a constant in that area, and these works would need to be completed. And it's worth saying this is not just because of the road network and the area. It is also as much for the clients of what's going to open there, because at the end of the day, the situation as it is now, that would put clients off coming back to the business anyway if you got sort of stuck on a roundabout for a significant amount of time. So this is very much key, and I support what the officers have put forward, and happy to second the recommendation. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Bowers. Does anyone else wish to add anything new or further to this thing? But it has been moved and seconded that we grant this variation with condition 35, now 34, amended, and condition 36, now 35, and the additional condition 38. All those in favour? That is unanimous. Thank you, members. That now brings us to 5B, application number 2100493 out, land adjacent to Kearney's Farm, Oak Road, Halstead. This can be found on pages 46 to 81, and we do have speakers on this application. The first person wishing to make a statement is Mr. Mark Sweeting. Mr. Sweeting, would you like to make your statement, please? Can I just remind you, you have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, fellow councillors. My name is Mark Sweeting, and I live at Coney's Cottage in Oak Road. My wife and myself wish to strongly object to this planning proposal. We did initially respond disclosing our concerns to Braintree Council via an email in 2021. A major concern related to the fact that Oak Road narrows into a single track towards the southeast corner of the road and is not felt to be suitable to cope with more excessive traffic due to the constant deterioration of the lane in terms of its surface as well as the flooding issues. Currently, the lane attracts considerable numbers of walkers, ramblers, families, cyclists, as well as wheelchair users, which has on occasions raised safety issues as there are no pavements available. The new planned entrance for this development will only encourage more vehicles to use the narrow lane and to cut through to Tidings Hill and beyond. For example, since the David Wilson development has taken place, there's no doubt there has been an increase in traffic in use, as well as an increase in number of delivery vehicles. The boundary also to our rear garden will sadly back onto the boundary of the new development boundary, and no doubt this will result in privacy issues for us once detailed plans become available. Furthermore, and quite important for us as a family, our property is situated directly onto the lane with no frontage and is located about 170 metres from this new proposed main entry. We fear that the heavy earth excavation and construction lorries could cause us serious subsidence issues, especially as our property is over 200 years old and does not enjoy the current building regulations in terms of strength, stability to sustain this level of activity. So that could cause us a particular problem. In conclusion, we therefore hope that this committee will adopt the decision to refuse the planning application on the basis of some of the information I've been able to give you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Sweeting, for attending and making your statement. The next person wishing to make a statement is Mr. Anthony Bishop, and he is from Coney's Farm.
Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Bishop.
As has already been said, my name is Anthony Bishop of Coney's Farm, Oak Road, and in my opinion, the most affected resident by this application. From the site plan, it would appear that approximately 12 of the 39 houses would be adjacent to and overlook my property. This would result in major loss of privacy, which I've enjoyed for 35 years, having moved here because of the rural aspect. This loss of privacy would especially apply to our rear garden, which is approximately 48 metres wide, but only 15 metres in depth. The proposed development would also lead to the loss of 2 oak trees, 1 mountain ash, 1 walnut, 2 willows and a contorted willow, all of which are mature trees and most importantly are within 10 metres of my rear boundary. I would also point out that there are other mature trees elsewhere on the site. The proposed access to the site would also result in a loss of a substantial amount of hedgerow. Deer, rabbits and other wildlife would disappear if this development proceeds. I would also point out that Oak Road is a single track road without any passing area and is in very poor condition and floods in certain areas. This road is increasingly used by walkers and has seen a noticeable increase in traffic since the recent large developments by Bloor Homes and David Wilson Homes. This will no doubt further increase with the recently approved site for 80 homes with access from Tynings Hill, which is adjacent to Oak Road. Oak Road is also increasingly used as an alternative route to and from Halstead and beyond, and also to avoid traffic delays on the A131. In conclusion, I hope that the committee adopts the officer's recommendations and refuses the application. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Bishop. Thank you. The final person wishing to make a statement on this application is Councillor Mrs. Jackie Pelham. I've just realised I didn't do a joint declaration on behalf of us all, that we all know Councillor Mrs. Pell. I'm sorry, Alison. Having seen her here, and I should have done it. No one reminded me anyhow. She is representing Halstead Town Council. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and Madam Chairman and members. As the Chairman has said, I am here tonight representing Halstead Town Council. Halstead Town Council is submitting a statement in support of the refusal recommended by the planning officers and will amplify the strong objections submitted after the application was reviewed at the Halstead Town Council full council meeting. Oak Road is a single-track country lane which was not intended to carry any heavy traffic and is totally unsuitable for construction traffic or for new residents to use as a rat run. In fact, they would have no choice as this lane is the only access to the other roads. The road surface is poor and liable to flooding, and there are no footpaths for pedestrians. Development would be likely to result in loss of trees, which would give further rise to further flooding. Due to its position, an application was made in 2017 by Halstead Town Council for Oak Road to be classified as a quiet lane, but this has not yet been granted. This road is currently used mainly by those who like to walk, run and cycle. In addition, this development would destroy the environment the walkers and cyclists come to enjoy and displace local wildlife. The adjoining Tidings Hill is also not suitable for an influx of heavy traffic, as it is very narrow in places and always has a large number of parked cars which obstruct traffic flow. Essex County Council have recently erected road narrow signs on Tidings Hill. They have not commented on the existing highway situation and not said how you will exit the bottom of Tidings Hill. Such a development would also result in a huge loss of privacy for the original two houses in Oak Road. It would be helpful to such consultations if highways were to come forward more readily to work with the planning committee early in the consultation period and at the very least make a comment. Braintree Planning is being blamed for the non-action of Essex County Council. We feel that a meeting is urgently needed between the two authorities to remedy this non-action comment. As with all planned developments for Halstead, the town's infrastructure cannot cope with any further pressure that will result on schools and doctors' surgery. We hope you will support the officer's recommendation. I would add, members, that the highways recommendations here do not mention any way of how you're getting to the site. They talk about in the site, and they don't talk how you're going to access those other roads. This is a nonsense, an absolute nonsense. These people are paid a lot of money to do this job. Primary school child could do this job better than they could, and it's time we stood up to these people and get them to recognise that what they're creating for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pell. Thank you very much indeed. That brings us to the end of people wishing to make a statement on this application. We'll now come to the presentation, which is going to be made by Melanie. Good evening, and thank you, Melanie.
Good evening, members. So the application before you this evening is an outline planning permission with all matters reserved for 39 dwellings at land adjacent Coney's Farm, Oak Road, Halstead. This first slide shows the site location plan. So there's been many references to Oak Road, which runs down one side of the site. And then there's a sharp right-hand bend that then runs to the south of the site and then carries on further until it connects up to Tidings Hill. You can just make out on the site location plan properties, fairly new properties in Rawlingson's Lane, and then you can also see the older properties within the main part of Halstead in Coney's Road. And the gentleman who spoke earlier live in these two properties at Coney's Farm and Coney's Cottage. This slide here shows the indicative site layout that's been submitted with the application. This shows that there are 39 dwellings on the site, but I would urge members to perhaps particularly ignore this section here. I have a detailed slide relating to the access that's being proposed, yeah, it's not as wide as shown on there. But this is the indicative plan that's been submitted with the application. But if members were to overturn the recommendation, this wouldn't be approved as part of any application. I thought this aerial photograph would be useful just to put the site in context, given that we had the application that Neil dealt with a couple of weeks ago. So this is highlighted in green, which is access off of Tidings Hill. The red area with the star is the current application site that we're looking at. And then to the north, we've got the older part of Halstead, and then to the west, we've got the Blore Homes and David Wilson's development accessed off of Oak Road that runs down off of the 131 at the top here. So this proposed access plan, I've made it as large as I can to be able to fit it on the slide. This shows you the existing access into the site is here, that area of green. To the left-hand side of that is an access that leads to the water tower that's got a number of telephone aerials on top of it. So it's proposed that the existing access will be closed.
and that a new access, vehicular access and pedestrian access will be located here. The key thing I wanted to point out to you this evening is this fuchsia coloured line going in either direction is this site display that's required for the access. And in my next few slides I have got some photographs along Oak Road, but it's this section of the site that we're particularly concerned about in terms of, in order to create that visibility display in both directions, a large section of the hedgerow and trees that are currently along that section of Oak Road, they will have to be removed to make that safe access. And whilst access isn't a matter that's currently being considered at the moment, the applicant is required to demonstrate that the site can be accessed in a safe manner. So this is something that has been worked on over a number of months by the applicant to finally demonstrate that there is a suitable access. As I say, it resulted in officers feeling unhappy with the amount of vegetation that was going to be removed. So if I move on to the photographs. So these two photographs are taken as you first turn into the sort of rural section of Oak Road, if I can call it that. So if you can just see where my cursor is here, that's the existing access into the site. And just out of shot behind this fence line is the access that leads into the water tower. Handily, just where the man in the orange top is walking his dog is where the proposed access will go. So you can make out here between where the existing access and where he is standing, a lot of, if not all of that vegetation along the frontage there would have to be removed to make way for the proposed access. On the other side of the road, you can just make out the roof and the chimneys of the new properties, newish properties that are within Richardson Lane. The photograph at the bottom here is kind of looking back in the opposite direction. So you can just make out the existing access that serves the site, and then the fence that wraps around the property at the end there, which is this fence here. And again, it's this section of hedgerow and trees that officers have a concern about in terms of the amount that would have to be removed to create those safe visibility displays. The next two photographs are slightly further along Oak Road. So again, in both of these photographs, you can just make out where, say in this one here, we've got a lamppost. So again, that serves the new property in the David Wilson site. And then at the end there, you can make out an existing property where the sharp left-hand turn is in Oak Road. And again, some of this vegetation will have to be removed to be able to create those acceptable visibility displays. The next few photographs are within the site. So members may remember within the officer report there is mention of the TPO tree that sits within the Tidings Hill site, if I call it that, and lies sort of very close to the boundary with the current application site. And that's on this photograph here marked with the red star. And then this is a photograph of the existing northern boundary of the site. Again, some further photographs looking northwards. So in this one, you can just about make out through the hedgerow some existing properties within Coney's Road. We've also got the water tower. Some further photographs within the site. This is the existing pond. And so this is looking in an easterly direction. And then the Tidings Hill site lies beyond where these conifers are, these darker trees at the top here. And then this photograph is another one looking across the site. So I think the photographs do demonstrate that, particularly around the edges of the site, it is still well treed and is fairly well enclosed. So as way of a summary and a recommendation, the application is with all matters reserved for 39 residential units. It's outside of the town boundary and therefore there is a conflict with RLP2 and CS5. There would be a delivery of up to 11 affordable units and then the economic benefits flowing from construction and thereafter. However, officers have identified harm to the landscape and character of the area by the creation of the vehicular and pedestrian access. There are also issues with insufficient information relating to ecology, sustainable drainage and trees, and then also the lack of the Section 106. When considering the flat planning balance and having regard to the adverse impacts and benefits outlined above, and having regard to the requirements of the NPPF as a whole, officers have concluded that the benefits of the proposal are outweighed by the harms, including the harm arising with the conflict with the development plan, and as such, planning permission should be refused in line with the development plan. And therefore, the recommendation is to refuse the application as per the reasons set out in the appendix. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Melanie. Thank you. Members, Councillor Munday.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Melanie, for a very in-depth presentation. Just to reiterate some of the points that were raised from people in question time. Oak Road is a single-track road. It really isn't able to substantiate the construction traffic, let alone even just the cars that are going up and down from the increase in housing generally. And we're still awaiting the result of the application for quiet road status, which was 2017. This development is definitely outside the development boundary, not allocated for development in either the adopted local plan or the proposed Section 2 plan. There's a lot of loss of privacy to the Coney's Farm and Coney's Road properties. Very upset about the mature tree losses that will have to happen if this does go through, and especially about the hedgerow loss. Again, Halstead still, although we're a sustainable town, at what point can we become unsustainable? Again, we can't cope with further pressure on schools and doctor surgeries with developments like this. So I'm more than happy to move recommendation for refusal of this application.
Thank you, Councillor Munday. Does it find a seconder? Thank you, Councillor. Mrs. Beavers, do you wish to speak?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. And just very briefly, I'm happy to support the officer's recommendation, the recommendation by Councillor Munday to reject the application. I mean, at the top of my notes, I've just put the words "enough is enough," and we've spent, I think, about the last 3 meetings discussing sites in this location. And I wanted to thank Mark Sweetin, the gentleman from Coney's Farm, and once again, Councillor Jackie Powell from Halstead Town Council, who I think really spoke very eloquently and have brought forward all of the issues. Quiet lane status, it has been approved. It's on the approved allocations list. It is just a matter of time. I'm sure if Councillor Abbott was here this evening, he would be waving his arms around in the air about the removal of these trees. And it's good to see that at least one of them, if not more, perhaps we need to look at that, have got the TPOs on them. I just wanted to make 2 other points. Councillor Jackie Powell made the point about, you know, we could have done this a bit more front-loaded and had some early day discussions on this, and clearly we know this is what the members' forums will be about. But I would be really disappointed if this went to appeal or we saw something coming back that wasn't quite as big as this. I mean, I really just do feel on this that it's completely overdeveloped, and it was quite nice the way that Melanie spoke about, you know, turning the corner, and this is where the rural aspect begins. But actually on the other side of the road we've got David Weston and Blore, and that's all gone now. So although that bit of rurality exists, it's about the only bit left now, and I think it is really worth protecting. So happy to second Councillor Munday's proposal. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor. Mrs. Beavers. Councillor Mrs. Spray.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yes, I'm happy also to support the officer's recommendation for refusal. I take on board and I'm very sympathetic, particularly to Councillor Mrs. Powell's very passionate views on highways, you know, some of which I think we share. There are actually 5, I think, very strong reasons given by officers for refusal for this. None of them involve highways, because actually highways have not raised an objection. They have pointed out the significant amount of vegetation that would have to be removed, but there are no actual highways reasons. But there are enough other reasons. Principally, I think the fact that officers feel 49 dwellings on this site is not deliverable. It's just too many. The SUDS plan put forward is not acceptable to the Essex County Council SUDS team, and I think Anglian Water also supported that view. And then we have a couple of reasons around insufficient information on protected species on the site, and the rather significant tree, where a tree protection plan has not been produced by the applicant. And then finally, no Section 106 report prepared at the time the agenda went out, and I'm assuming that's still the case. Yeah. So 5 very strong reasons for refusal, notwithstanding that there is nothing there on highways grounds. But I think all in all, I'm very happy to support refusal. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mrs. Spray. Councillor Mann.
One additional point only. The local plan process looked at this site in 2016 and rejected it at Corfu site's stage, because they thought that it would be an intrusion into the countryside in an area that had a high sensitivity to change. So that is, I think, a further nail in the coffin of this particular application.
Thank you, Councillor Mann. Councillor Mrs. Wilson.
Yeah, I just wanted to
Can you put your microphone on, please? Thank you.
As a very newbie person here, I have to say I had it was a pleasure actually. I had to go and see a business down Oak Road. And I mean, how on earth do you think you can get traffic down Oak Road? I don't know. I went past where I had to go and do a 3-point turn, which took me absolutely ages because the road is so narrow. And I can't see how, I'm being quite basic here, how traffic is going to get up and down that road. It's chaos.
Yes. Thank you. Can you switch your microphone off now, please? Thank you. Thank you very much. Does anyone else? Councillor Sphere.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to support the comments that Councillor Spray made with regards to lack of the Section 106 and the SUDS in this application. I think are fairly heavy reasons for refusal. Thank you.
Thank you. No one else? Well, it has been moved by Councillor Monday and seconded by Councillor Mrs. Beavers that we refuse this application. All those in favour of refusal? Once again, that is unanimous. Thank you very much indeed, members. That now brings us to the application. I'll just let Councillor Mrs. Parker leave. This brings us to application 5C. This is application number 21-01962 out. 72 Little Yeldham Road, Little Yeldham. And this application can be found on pages 82 to 106. And I do have speakers on this application. The first person wishing to make a statement is Mr. Anthony Perkins, but due to illness he's been unable to attend, and it has been agreed that Alison will read his statement. Alison, could you read Mr. Perkins' statement for me, please?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Good evening, Madam Chair and District Councillors. My name is Anthony Perkins of Hydewood Cottage, Little Yeldham, and I am representing 14 households in the vicinity of this proposal. Little Yeldham covers a considerable area, with many of the houses being ex-Land Settlement Association houses, all detached properties, most with extremely large gardens, some offset to one side, potentially making them ideal candidates for a second or third dwelling. However, BDC policies covering this do not permit infilling, and the intensification of ribbon development and approval of this application would change that, opening the door to further similar applications throughout Little Yeldham and the surrounding area, where in the region of 100 such houses exist. approval could lead to Little Yeldham almost doubling in size as other pockets of land are developed, with the District Council being powerless to prevent it happening. This, however, would not be sustainable, with our country lanes being unable to carry the extra traffic generated, there being no pavements for safe walking, no cycleways or street lighting, no public transport necessitating the use of a car, and schools, doctor surgeries and healthcare facilities being stretched to the maximum. The proposed vehicle access on the site plan would remove a large amount of established hedging and trees, which not only destroys the countryside scene, so important in Little Yeldham, but also exposes the ribbon development created by adding 2 houses in the currently hidden residential garden. Additionally, highways have not yet accepted this proposal in terms of size or the associated intensification of vehicles joining Little Yeldham Road, so it is very possible that the damage is increased with the widening of the access necessary to satisfy highways. Despite modifications, the original concept that the houses in the former land settlement estate are unique and spacious has been maintained, and the overall appearance of each property blends into the countryside setting around Little Yeldham. If approved, this proposal would intensify development and would start to eradicate the open feel of the area. BTC have, in the main, continued to uphold policies affecting our area, and we are advised that they have their 5-year housing supply. So we trust that you, the committee, will accept the planning officer's recommendation and move to refuse permission. Thank you for your time. That's the end of the statement, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much indeed. Can I thank Mr. Perkins for sending in his statement, and thank you for reading it. The next person wishing to make a statement is Councillor Mrs. Mary Pearce. She is representing Little Yeldham, Tilbury, Tuxter, Clare and Ovington Parish Council.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good evening, councillors. This application is speculative, not part of the development plan and not required, as BDC can demonstrate a 5-year housing land supply. The site is not in a sustainable location, being remote from services and having no safe pedestrian cycle access to Great Yeldham, the closest village where public transport and some local amenities are provided. Consequently, there will be a heavy reliance on the private vehicle to gain access to services, facilities, employment and education. Creation of the proposed new access, which is not yet accepted by highways, would remove a large part of the established hedgerow and tree boundaries screening the site, which would alter the character and appearance of the street scene and create a sense of urban sprawl in the countryside. Additionally, the number of cars that are likely to be accommodated by these 2 houses will significantly increase the dangers on this part of Little Yeldham Road, where speeding vehicles are an issue due to it being straight with no bends. The site is located in the former land settlement housing estate for Little Yeldham, and proposals for new dwellings on the sizable garden plots afforded to these houses have been consistently resisted by the Parish Council, residents and BDC to protect the character and appearance of the countryside and avoid ribbon development. This proposal would create 3 dwellings in a row, which conflicts with that aim. BDC policy LPP 41, paragraph 6.141, formalises that aim. The former land settlement estate housing between Great Yeldham, Little Yeldham and Tilbury Juxter Clare is not suitable for infill in order to protect its historical character. This policy, however, relates to hamlets, and the planning officer has quite rightly stated
but the hamlet policy does not apply to applications in the land settlement estate such as this, so it has not been considered as part of the determination. The Parish Council feel that the wording and its intentions are relevant for this application, however, and ask you to consider it when making your assessment. Concluding, the Parish Council urge you to accept the Planning Officer's well-considered recommendation and refuse this application. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Mrs Pearce. We now come to the presentation, as we have no additional speakers, and the presentation is going to be made by Juliet. Good evening and thank you, Juliet.
Good evening and thank you. So this is an outline application with all matters reserved for demolition of a shop and construction of 2 dwellings at 72 Little Yeldham Road. The site is located outside of the defined development boundary between the villages of Little Yeldham, which is up here, and Great Yeldham. The nearest key service village is Sybil Hedingham, which is approximately 3.5 miles to the south of the site. There would be a strong reliance on the private vehicle to access services and facilities, given the limited sustainable transport options available in the vicinity of the site. You can see from this aerial photo, so this is the site here, it's surrounded by farmland and there's no immediate neighbouring residential properties adjoining the site. The site currently forms part of the side garden for 72 Little Yeldham Road. And you can see from this aerial photograph that the site is enclosed by established vegetated boundaries. We can see an outbuilding to the southwest of the site, which fronts onto the driveway for 72 Little Yeldham Road. The outbuilding was formerly used as a shop for craft supplies with permission granted in 2005. However, there was a planning condition that's imposed restricting the use to be carried out only by the applicant who submitted the application, and the property has since changed ownership and the retail use has subsequently ceased. The submitted application proposes to demolish this outbuilding. As this is an outline application, matters of access, layout, scale and appearance are reserved and not for consideration at this stage. However, we need to be satisfied that safe highway access can be achieved. The applicants have provided an indicative block plan with the application. We can see here it's suggesting a shared single access for both dwellings. The dwellings are identical in appearance and set back within the plot with a similar footprint to 72 Little Yeldham Road. Based on this indicative block plan, we have the amenity space and car parking proposed for each dwelling are adequate to comply with our standards. Members will note from the committee report that the Highway Authority have submitted an objection as the developer has not demonstrated that the proposal would be acceptable in terms of highway safety, efficiency and accessibility. So these are the indicative floor plans that have been submitted, proposing 4 bedrooms for each dwelling. This is the indicative front elevation proposed for one of the dwellings. There isn't a defined character or style for the dwellings along this part of Little Yeldham Road. Many of those dwellings, including those in the land settlement houses, have been extended or altered over time. However, the indicative elevation does draw on characteristics in the area, for example, sort of dormers and the hipped roofs. These are the indicative side elevations we have, and this is the indicative rear elevation. The materials proposed for the dwellings haven't been specified, therefore officers are unable to conclude whether they're compatible with the countryside setting. Looking at the photo, so this is a photo of 72 Little Yeldham Road. The application site currently forms part of the side garden for this property on this part of the site. This is a photo taken from 72 Little Yeldham Road, looking towards the main road itself. You can see the existing access, and to the left of the photo is the outbuilding, which was formerly used as the shop, which is proposed to be removed, and the site is actually to the rear of this outbuilding. So if we look at this photo here, this is the side garden, and we can see the side elevation of the outbuilding we saw in the previous photo.
And we can also see the established sort of tree row and hedges in the background, and this is along the frontage of the main road, where the indicative plan proposes the vehicular access to be achieved. So this is another photo taken within the site, looking from the side of 72, and we can see there's an established sort of tree boundary along the eastern edge, and this is visible as you drive along the road past as coming from Little Yeldham. We can see, although the site is currently garden, it appears as an undeveloped parcel of land, which provides a softening edge to the existing sporadic dwelling, which blends into the surrounding countryside setting. The NPPF refers to ensuring decisions take into account the desirability of maintaining an area's prevailing character and setting, including residential gardens. It seeks to resist inappropriate development of residential gardens where development would cause harm to the local area, and officers consider that development of the site would compromise the character and setting. So on this photo, so this is travelling from Great Yeldham towards Little Yeldham, and you can see number 72 here on the side elevation, and you can see the surrounding farmland as well, so you can understand sort of the context of the site. The proposal for the two dwellings would obviously be visible as you travel along this part of the road, and would create sort of a sense of urban sprawl into the countryside, with an additional 3 dwellings in a row. So this photo is taken outside of 72 along the road frontage, and you can see sort of the existing access. There's 2 access points in to number 72. And then on this photo, so looking the other way towards Great Yeldham, we can see the established tree and hedgerow boundary here. And officers are concerned that the removal of this, part of this, to facilitate an access and achieve the necessary visibility displays would alter the character and appearance of the street scene. Now, this photo is taken travelling from Little Yeldham towards Great Yeldham, and the site is just behind on this tree boundary here, and these are the trees that we saw in the earlier photo from within the site. So officers have applied the flat planning balance and have had regard to the adverse impacts and public benefits of the proposal. The adverse impacts of the proposal are summarised in the committee report and refer to the limited sustainable travel choices to access services and facilities, the unexpected sense of urban sprawl, diluting the character of the countryside, and harms to the trees and the hedgerows, which, although not protected, contribute to the character and appearance of the street scene. There's also insufficient information provided to demonstrate that a safe highway access can be achieved. Looking at the public benefits, the proposal would deliver limited economic benefits during construction, given the scale of the proposal, and also a net gain of 2 dwellings, which is afforded limited weight due to the scale again. Officers have concluded that the benefits of the proposal are outweighed by the harms, and the recommendation is refusal. Thank you.
Thank you, Juliet. Members. Councillor Swear.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I think the important point in this outline application is from highways as 7.4.1 at page 81 of the objection from the Highways Authority has not demonstrated that it's acceptable in terms of highway safety, efficiency, and accessibility. And I think that's just a really important point, and on that point alone, I take the officer's comments on this. I don't agree with about an urban sprawl in the countryside. I find those are rather 2 difficult ideas to put together on one plot. But otherwise, I'm happy to move the officer's recommendation as this application stands.
Sorry, did you move it? I didn't.
Yes, I did move it, subject to the additional bells.
Thank you. Thank you. Does it find a seconder before I move on? Thank you, Councillor. Mrs. Spray, did you wish to speak?
No, thank you, Chairman. I'm quite content with the 2 reasons for refusal which Juliet set out. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councillor Mann.
I did think it was quite an extraordinary attempt to invoke the Hamlets policy. The only problem was it's about 9 dwellings short.
Councillor Mann, that's a very good comment. Anyone else? Well, it has been moved and seconded that we refuse this application. It was moved by Councillor Spear, seconded by Councillor Mrs Parker. All those in favour of refusal? That is once again unanimous. Thank you very much. That has been refused. Now we get Miss. Right, members, we'll now continue, and we come to our final application this evening, which is application 5D, and it's application number 2200305HH, 2 Coniston Close, Great Notley. We have no speakers on this application. It's going to be presented by Chris. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Good evening, members. So this is an application for alterations and extensions to an existing residential property at number 2 Coniston Close in Great Notley. I'll just take you through the plans to start with. So we have the location plan here. Existing detached property, so the 4 elevations of the property. And the floor plans. Just a shot of the roof, and it shows the existing dormer within the roof. And the layout plan, so you can see there's parking at the front, and you can see the layout of the ground floor. And then in terms of the proposed alterations, there's 3 elements to the proposal. The first is a larger first floor dormer gable projection. We have a front stroke side porch that you can see in the elevation plan below. And to the rear, we have a proposed rear extension. So again, at the top of the slide, you can see the side elevation of the dwelling. And you can see the proposed floor plan layout. So a larger bedroom towards the front. And you'll see the single story to the rear. Slightly better on the ground floor layout plan. Just a couple of photographs. So you've got the existing property here. So again, you can see the existing dormer, which would be enlarged at the front. Just slight context in terms of the street scene. Slightly more, so again, similar types of projections within the local area. And then a shot of the rear elevation of the property. So on the right-hand side, that's the location of the rear extension. So in this particular case, all elements of the proposal are considered to be acceptable in terms of their design, layout and appearance, in keeping with the existing property. It's not considered that the proposals would have a detrimental impact upon neighbouring residential amenity. Sufficient parking would be retained at the property, and therefore officers have concluded that the proposals are deemed to be acceptable and are hence recommended for approval this evening. I should just point out, and members would have noted from the report, the reason this application is reported is because the applicant is a member of staff. So for transparency, all of those applications are reported to Planning Committee. But the proposal is considered to be acceptable in this particular case, so recommended for approval, subject to the conditions outlined in the report, and happy to answer any questions, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you very much. Councillor Ritchie.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. This is in my ward of Grey Notley, and this mentioned by Chris in his presentation is in the White Court area development. Also, as Chris mentioned, we're just following the process due to the applicant being an employee of this authority. And as he also mentioned, it's for transparency and ensures that for probity we get a chance to give a final say. As mentioned again through the reports, it's more than acceptable by way of size and scale, and it meets all of our policy requirements to boot. So I've got nothing further to add than to move off to recommendations for approval, Madam Chairman. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Ritchie. Does it find a seconder? It does, Councillor Mann. Did you wish to add anything?
Entirely unremarkable in its context, Chairman. Many of the sort of dwellings within sight have been amended in similar ways, entirely within policy. Very happy to support.
Thank you. Anyone else? No. Well, it has been moved and secondly grant this application. All those in favour? That is unanimous. Thank you, members. And members, that brings us to the end of our planning agenda. I'll close the meeting at 8:23 by 1 o'clock, 8:22 by another one, and probably 8:23, 4 by the other one. I'll say good night and thank you very much, and thank you to officers.